can I ever hope to quench this hunger inside my loins? I'll listen to the New Way podcast with those two geeky boys. Ooh, ooh, and this week there's Nick. Ooh, ooh, and his giant dick. Ooh, ooh, at least that's what his mom says. La-dee-da, it's another fucking podcast. Who cares? No one listens anyway. Except the intros, they're really fucking badass. Thank you, Ben and Matt. Well, really, only Matt. Okay, sometimes Ben and Matt. But this one is just Matt. The New Way podcast is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
I liked it. I was good at it. And I was alive.
The most important part of your life, that's why all of you are here. Nobody does it alone, Jack.
Maybe you're right. Maybe we will see each other again. But just in case we don't, I want you to know how much you meant to me.
5-card stud, nothing wild. And the sky's the limit.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Specifically, your mom.
No, it's funny. It's fine. Like, trust me. I talk about, double fisting, and she'll get over it. But
it's called room tone.
What room tone?
Ambiance. Welcome once again to the New Way podcast with Ben and Matt.
As I pointed to Ben 7 times, and he just stared at me like, I don't know what that is.
It's a finely tuned machine.
Who was that? Who was that talking?
Wait,
it's me.
That's not you, Ben.
There's somebody else.
There's
here
another
with
person
us.
here.
Oh no!
Look at me, guys.
No, stop staring at me. It's weird when you look at me.
With us today, we have the inimitable Nick SantaCroce, who is actually a real person. We haven't been making some sort of grand statements about this mythological character. Nick, say hi.
Oh, hey everybody. I want to tell you guys, in all honesty, I've really enjoyed listening to the podcast. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm like Marissa Tomei at the Oscars, Ben. I'm just happy to be here, buddy.
Uh-huh. Well,
but
you're unqualified.
I'm surprised you're not.
Have to.
Who else could you be at the Oscars?
Well, I'd only want to be Marissa Tomei for.
I would like to be Nick's date if he's going to be Marissa Tomei at the Oscars.
Marissa Tomei the wrestler, or Marissa Tomei and...
I would assume you'd be Sally Field, and you'd be like, you love me. You really love me. You'll have me on the podcast.
I do feel like that.
This is actually really elaborate performance art. A lot of you don't know that Ben and I are actually really good mimics, and we've created a character. And what's difficult is that we have to each, like, when one of us is talking, the other one has to be Nick, but then we have to effortlessly switch to the other one. It's going to be seamless.
That would be pretty impressive.
No one's going to ever believe that there was a third person here.
Matt Schenk is the manliest man in the land.
Well, if you go on Facebook and you look at pictures of Nick SantaCroce, those are just computer generated. It's CGI.
We've been working on this project for... This is Last Pine's greatest project, really. Nick SantaCroce. We
have you seen the picture? Have you seen the picture of you that's actually on our website though? That picture may as well be Photoshop.
I love that picture.
It's an awesome picture.
I forgot which one I chose.
It's the one with him in the hipster glasses. And
I did choose it.
It wasn't hipster. It was the Kanye 80s like shade glasses.
Oh, not hipster. Yeah. Just the Kanye 80s shade glasses.
It was a Thriller jacket that I paid, $150, and it came from Bangladesh. Like 2 days before my 30th birthday, when
it was the one they used in that Indian Thriller. Like they actually just took the one that guy used.
Well, in the spirit of the podcast, yes, it was real movie memorabilia.
I hear baby crying.
Let's pause it for a second.
And we're back. Ben had to change a diaper or two. Nick unfortunately cannot control himself and is not house trained.
Sorry, guys. I know, act like you've been here before. I'm fucking up already.
I gotta be honest. While Ben was attending to baby duties, I did what all good sitcom crazy neighbor friends do, and I started pouring beers. And I poured a mango habanero beer by Founders called Mango Magnifico. and it's one of the strangest combinations of flavors in a beer.
This podcast is brought to you by Founders Ale.
Mango Magnifico. What
right
they
now.
drink in the South America.
Okay, so here we'll take a quick sip and
Everyone give a... It is, yeah. I'm not super impressed with it.
I actually kind of like it because it's not even really beer. It's almost like a cider.
Yeah, it's like a cider with hot sauce on the back end.
I kind of like it.
The first sip was just sweet. I just took a second sip, and it was spicy.
It burns.
You don't know what you're going to get.
Anyway,
But
so
hey, actually, before we start...
no. We started already.
Well, before we really get into the meat and potatoes, I have something for you,
Oh,
Matthew.
you go fart in your hand and put it in my face and tell me you're selling rotten fruit?
Not until you fall asleep. This, my friend, has been in my possession
Oh, for fuck's sake, yes.
for, what, a year? Almost a year?
Over a year. Almost 2 years.
Here, let me give a play-by-play. Nick just
There it is, buddy.
with some
It's out.
with some sleight of hand. Nick just magically made a lighter appear in his hand and gave
My favorite lighter, of which I have lost 3 others that I've had to replace. And this one, it's the one that looks like a little movie clapboard, and it's my favorite Zippo, and I, as happy as I am to see Nick, I'm equally happy to be reunited. And it feels so good.
I'm telling you what, man. It beat all odds. Against all odds, Phil Collins style.
It traveled.
It traveled from a move from the Hell House. You guys remember? With the pork rind man that came around every day at 4 p.m. in the scary streets.
This is bad radio. This is like the most obscure.
I lived in this apartment complex in a terrible part of town on the outskirts of Koreatown.
I like that apartment.
Well, the apartment was great once you stepped inside, but it was walking a mile from your parking spot in 3 different days that had street cleaning and scary people living all around you. That was a problem. But that survived the move.
Look at the mic. I know you. Nick is just gazing longingly at me.
I like eye contact when I'm connecting.
That's
with
why you
people.
have to use your peripherals.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Point your
sorry.
crotch at me, but your head at the microphone.
All right, I'm better.
Here's
this
the
way.
funny thing. I do
Actually, that
remember,
works.
like, I after we had been in that apartment, I was thinking, this really isn't that bad. And we were thinking that one night where we walked. Remember, we walked a short marathon to a bar, and then we went to another bar, and then we were trying to get home from Jumbo's Clown Room, and I think the whole idea is when we went into Jumbo's Clown Room, we were like, oh, we'll just walk back, and then by the hour later that we left Jumbo's Clown Room, we were like, taxi!
Yeah.
Even the taxi didn't want to go all the way there.
Nobody walks from Jumbo's Clown Room. But
So-
anyway, there's your lighter. It's got a movie slate painted on it.
I'm so happy to have it back again.
It's very you.
And it is so me. So yeah, we have Nick here, and you're actually going to probably hear Nick on
More than-
2 or 3 podcasts over the next few weeks. We're hoping to do a marathon podcast weekend of one that is likely. I'm going to make the wager now that it will be unlistenable, but we'll see.
Well, no, it'll be listenable, and I'm going to point my crotch in the right direction, and I'm going to stare right into the microphone.
It's going to be me driving you like Miss Daisy in the back of my car with a microphone while you're drunk and giggling and talking about either drunk and pissed off that the Ravens lost or giddy and happy that the Ravens won.
So the theme of this podcast is talking about things that the audience should have no idea what we're talking about. Is that the theme?
No.
I don't like your sass.
I'm just saying.
But
no one knows why we're here, why I'm here.
We're going to talk about... Ben doesn't like to get right into the theme immediately.
I don't. I like to... we tease it around a little bit.
Ben doesn't just stick it right in and say, here's your topic, listen to what we have to say about it, and then leave.
More
the money
foreplay.
on the dresser.
More foreplay.
Yeah.
I know.
Ben's like, hey, let's talk about what this week was like, huh?
How was your day?
Yeah.
It is fun, actually. The whole thing, but I will say really quickly, is when Nick was planning his visit here, you were like, I was like, you can come in and leave whenever you want to. And you were like, okay, well, I was going to come in on Friday and leave on Monday, but I have to come in on Thursday and leave on Tuesday. Is that okay? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Is that okay? Like, more the merrier. Like,
well, hey, man,
you get to have fun.
You got twins. You got a new house. You're busy. You're a busy man.
We make time. We make time.
This is true.
For the SantaCroce clan.
I'm just saying, man. I'm just, I don't want to put anybody out. I don't want to pull your podcast down.
No,
I already have.
Well, no, but and for those of you out there listening that are trying to paint a picture of what's going on out here, we're out on the patio, Ben's patio, the new location of the New Way podcast over the last few, except for a couple back in my place. But Nick, it is very dark out here. We sometimes have a light, but we don't really need it. But Nick is wearing, in the darkness, what looks like a 1920s one-piece bathing suit, such as seen on Harry Houdini when he would escape a safe dropped into the lake.
He kind of looks like Paul Mammalito right now. Like Paul Mammalito Chicago,
high compliment.
A Chicago outfit.
He doesn't look a huge cock at all.
A Houdini Mammalito.
Oof, that's a weird combination right there.
And before every trick, my wife will kiss me and put the key in my mouth so that I can escape later on.
So you're saying you want to make out with Paul's wife?
Probably.
Listen, Paul can read between the lines if he's listening.
Paul's never.
But Paul's
Did
never
you
gonna
know
listen.
about that though?
Is this podcast about Paul? No, then he's not listening to it.
Dude, we should make one podcast where we just talk about Paul the entire time, and I guarantee you he would be none the wiser. And then a year later, I would play it for him, and he would be like, "You need to take that offline, man."
This has been floating around. We talk about PNC.
Compliance issues, man. We gotta take that down.
It would just all be horrible stories about Paul, like the worst things he's ever done. All of us just recounting them poorly and making up our own endings.
For those who are listening who don't know Paul or Nick, we all know...
or us.
Or us, or any of us. Nick and I, just to give you a quick background before we actually do launch into our topic, we've been dicking around for long enough now, but Nick and I went to film school together, but more importantly, we played in a band together for a pretty...
The Black Crows.
For a pretty long time. And the aforementioned Paul Mammalito was in another band in the same era, circa 2004.
The era.
Big Daddies. It was an era. It was an era to remember at Big Daddies.
Wasn't that a Mandy Moore film?
The era?
To remember? It was Walk to Remember.
Walk to Remember. Anyway.
That's right.
Well,
I always get that mixed up because I lost my virginity to that film.
But Nick's good people. He's a friend of the cast, and we're happy to have him here to like play around with us a little bit.
Still
In my
little bit.
swimsuit.
Physically,
And my lost Houdini references.
Nick, put your penis in the mango habanero, and then use it on me, because I'm thinking that'll add a dimension
Of spice.
We are
don't normally have.
we're gonna talk about more while Nick is here, but I think today. Well, we've been waiting to get it out. We've been sitting here. We've been stewing over IM for the past, few days.
Ben and I have words to go over tonight.
We have words.
So, what spawned this week's podcast? Two things spawned this week's podcast. One, we have been very negligent to television on the podcast. Somewhat purposely, we were kind of waiting for a couple of people that we might bring in to talk about it, and I know Greg is extremely excited to do a television podcast, so we'll probably get that one in the future, but I'm a...
Yeah, fuck you, Greg. I'm talking about it tonight.
I'm a huge...
I would like to just go ahead and say fuck you, Greg, because you never follow the fucking rules. Greg is like, oh, hey, this podcast is going to be about video games. And you're like, actually, I would like to not talk about video games.
I'd like to be in that podcast.
I would like to talk about girls that I masturbated to when I told my mother I was playing video games.
But seriously, Grand Theft Auto 5 is so great, you guys.
Yeah. Every time Greg is on, he goes, I know what the rules were, and I didn't follow them at all.
I did not abide by the parameters of this podcast.
So we want to do TV, and what more fitting time to discuss television a little bit than on the heels of the finale of Breaking Bad, which was this week. Now, we'll probably talk about some other conclusions to series. So it's not just TV, but TV's usually the best example because you're dealing with a story that's linked.
Yeah, that was a question that Nick had, and I was like, I think I'm definitely going to bring film into it because I feel like, and I'll get into it actually.
Yeah, and we have books and film for sure. But
sure.
The easiest way to
I think mostly if it's trilogy, that's what will count. Not just a sequel.
No, I
think you have to have at least 3 films.
There are plenty of sagas that have an end to some.
They have to have at least 3 movies, though. Do you
Right.
think there are sagas that
that's
are
what
only
I'm
2
saying.
movies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're going trilogies.
3 or more,
Okay.
but you can have more than 3.
More than 3, but
technically
at
Star
least
Wars
a trilogy.
is a 6-episode saga.
Just stop it. Just stop.
That's how it's labeled. But
Technically, Indiana Jones has 4 films, but come on.
No, that doesn't.
See?
So, we figured we'd probably start this podcast with Breaking Bad and kind of have that be maybe, probably get discussed a little bit more. Ben and I seem to have somewhat differing opinions on the season as a whole, actually. We've kind of been, it's been an amicable differing of views on the episode.
Trouble in Paradise.
Sure.
And I listen, I'm definitely in the, like, super fanboy side that was there was very little Vince Gilligan could have done other than, like, just an episode of Walter White masturbating for an hour and then being like,
Tom
I
Hanks.
am the one who comes, and that's the end of it. That's the only way you could have really just totally made it even better. But, so, yeah, I was on the fanboy side, and Ben was kind of on the, I want to look at this a little bit more critically. Everyone loves it.
A little bit more objectively, yes.
Yeah, and so I'll try to be short with my piece on Breaking Bad. What I liked about the final season, or at least this, and especially looking at the final stretch, the final season was really a 2-year event, if you look at it the way they did. I like the progression quite a bit. I think the biggest problem or issue that the finale has to overcome is the Ozymandias episode, which was one of the best episodes of television.
Completely agreed.
And
I think it was the best episode of Breaking Bad. I really do.
Vince Gilligan thinks it's the best episode of Breaking Bad, and it's Rian Johnson directing, of course.
You're not going to argue with those guys.
So I think that you have to, for me, I can't look at the finale as a single episode and say, this episode was amazing. My feeling at the end was a feeling of, and I'd watched the marathons too, so it was a feeling of how did this series conclude as a whole, and especially this season. There are little moments leading up, like I rewatched the episode where, by the way, for everyone listening right now, if we start to talk about a property, understand there are going to be spoilers.
This
galore.
is something that's been out, so I mean, obviously, everyone. I mean, honestly, if you're on Facebook, you've already had Breaking Bad spoiled for
Very
you in all
likely.
likelihood.
But we're gonna
Or you have asshole friends.
yes. Snape kills
I mean,
I know.
do you remember my way to the Harry Potter
Do you
franchise?
remember? I'm not going to bring names into this, but do you remember when a certain former, colleague of ours posted "Rip Dumbledore" in the movie, and that was like 100 comment flame war on Facebook.
See, and I never. I mean, I saw the first Harry Potter at that point.
See,
and I decided I was going to go see the last movie. And I really was not invested. I didn't read any of the books, but I saw the first and the last. So I had nothing really invested in that franchise at all. But I saw this posted on Facebook, and it immediately just filled me with rage that someone would just do that. It wasn't even witty. It wasn't even a joke. It wasn't any creative way of saying it. It just said R.I.P. Dumbledore. And I remember just thinking, like, who fucking does that in this day and age?
They just can't. Actually, I'll tell you who does it. My brother is notorious for likely
By the
getting
way,
drunk.
we jumped way ahead right now
Yes.
because I was planning on talking about
Yeah, he has a
Potter
story.
at some point.
Yeah, we're going to get into Potter. No, I'm not talking, but this isn't actually a Potter. This is just someone that my brother will get on Facebook after watching an episode of television and just get diarrhea of the mouth over what happened in the episode and has pissed off on more than one occasion several people. And it's usually he's probably like a little bit lit or something when he does it. But he's always supremely cocky when I'll be like, dude, you gotta take that. He's like, yeah, fuck you. The next day he's like, I'm really sorry about what I did last night. But
Spoilers, remorse.
To get back to Breaking Bad, one of the things that really made it felt like all of the moments in the final episode, save for one thing that I felt that was criminally unaddressed. Most of them were great follow-ups to the second half of that season, like Walt and Walt Jr. at the pool at the hotel. Actually, the last time the family's together is that episode that everyone was like, it's so boring. Nothing. The episode before, there was a big gunfight. And the episode after, there was a big gunfight. And there's all this amazing stuff. And they do this boring, slow episode. I'm like, when you watch that, knowing what's going on in the finale now, it's heartbreaking. Because it's the last time that they are a family unit at all.
And Walt tries again.
Yeah.
At the very end, like, all right, we gotta go right now. And things escalate. And it's the first time you see Walt Jr. sort of take that step towards adulthood by, sheltering his mom and making that call to 911. He tried almost the same exact offer. Let's go right now. You got to just trust me. And they kind of took that blind faith leap, even when it was clear that something was going on. With that gasoline in the house, and they knew something was up. Skylar knew something was up, but they still went with him as a family. And that was the very last time they ever did anything for Walt.
So for me, really, and I felt all those little moments built up. I agree there are some flaws in it. For one, the idea that the big culmination is against these people that we've barely known throughout the series. It's not, the Walt and Hank thing is dispatched within Ozymandias, and now we're at Todd and the crazy Aryans. Now, Todd I actually liked as a character, and he got more and more fascinating to me. That performance I thought was really interesting. But it's also kind of like this conclusion. The real showdown at the end really needed to be Jesse and Walt. And that's the one thing I felt was not done well enough or long enough in the movie. In the TV series. Just that they have a nice moment. There's a good culmination to both characters. Jesse gets that great drive away with his minor victory. But I still felt the two of them needed to. Something more needed to happen.
Okay, so I mean, you kind of stepped down off of, because the thing was obviously I'm playing devil's advocate as somebody who's been watching Breaking Bad, and I finally, I've been playing a little bit behind it and finally caught up on it and watched.
I think you just like to piss people off.
I don't really.
I think like to argue with people and get on their goat.
I like to.
Does everyone like this thing? Or does everyone hate this thing? They like it. Oh, I'm gonna hate it.
Specifically, Matt.
That's Ben Wilson.
Specifically, Matt. Sometimes I like to. I like to sometimes
stoke the fires,
poke the
rage.
bear.
Oh God, rude.
Like you're because you're a bear.
Hey, boo-boo.
Yes, I'm a bear.
So I'm here's my point. Because it seems like you're backing off of it a little bit, because that's a very valid criticism.
I haven't gotten to my favorite part of the episode yet. I'm feeding into your fire first. I'm doing the same thing you do in reverse.
Okay. No, my issue was that exactly what Matt already said. I'll try to keep it as short and as simple as possible. Is that you have, and it's my problem with a lot of shows, is that you establish character with the hope that these characters are going to end up somewhere where this is going to work for all of these
Teen Mom
characters.
3 on MTV. None of
So
those characters
we
have
don't
made
talk
the
about
full...
reality TV show in this podcast. Time out for 1 minute.
My problem with...
I was doing laundry and I had it on the background.
1 minute.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
My problem with Breaking Bad, with the end of Breaking Bad, and it's not even a problem, because like I said, Breaking Bad, the worst that Breaking Bad can do, the worst episode, the episode I like least in the entire series, is still better than the majority of what's on television. So obviously, I'm being hypercritical about something that is obviously, heads and shoulders
Because you
above.
expect more.
Because you're saying a level of expectation. Exactly right. So what I will say is that they abandoned characters at the end of the show. They tied up story arcs that I didn't care about, that I think the majority of the viewing audience didn't care about, and they kind of left other characters out to dry because of that.
What do they tie up that no one wanted to see?
What about the girl who dies because of the tea? I mean, I don't care about the character. That character is one of the least interesting
It's
characters.
the only thing that... Okay, and here's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to go back a little bit here. With Jesse. Going into the finale, I had a couple things as a fan that I just wanted to see. And one of those things was, I just wanted to see Jesse kind of happy about something again. And anything. And to any degree. When you watch the pilot...
Then played into it for you.
Well, when you watch the pilot, and the first couple seasons, he's still this sort of man-child, and he's funny, and he's still, science, bitch! Mr. White, yeah, you did it! And everything is like seen through the eyes of a child, and he's got, these like witty one-liners and all these jokes about everything, and he goes from like Peter Parker to Bruce Wayne, where he's just totally jaded, and there's times where you even doubt that he even wants to be alive. And in that just one shot in the car when he finally escapes, and you could tell he's happy to be alive. He wants to be alive. and he laughs and he just floors it out of there. And that was good enough for me, because when you talk about, Matt, you go, we want to see Cranston kind of make amends with Jesse, or that relationship is unresolved. I think at that point, honestly, there is no relationship. It's dead. And that pretty much, you're hoping for something that's not going to happen. And they're not going to hug each other, and they're not going to play.
I want, and I understand that it also.
The swelling orchestral riff, and they're going to open mouth kiss.
The thing is, I'm
in my head, I was hoping that something. I mean, I'm not really hoping, but I was thinking that for them to have a moment, it would be interesting if somebody like the idea. Think about it this way: Walt was dying of cancer the entire show, and was utilizing Jesse as a crutch. I thought it would be interesting if at the end Walt was dying of a gunshot wound or something like that and had to use Jesse to kill him. Which would have been a much more interesting resolution.
But that's what he wanted. He wanted Jesse to kill him. In that one scene...
They had some of the moment I wanted. They didn't have all of the moment, but in fairness, I understand that writing that scene with the moment.
I wanted it out of mercy, not because of whatever.
I think that there are ways that scene.
That's him forgiving Walt.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a mercy move for Aaron Paul not to shoot Cranston.
Exactly.
He didn't shoot him. It was more of a fuck you. You
exactly.
want to die, you do it yourself.
You're going to die yourself.
And I think, and obviously, you fall in, there's a pitfall if you go into writing that you write something that's too wordy, that tells too much. And what you try to do in TV and movie, you try to show and tell, which they did. What I said about the finale when I was talking on Facebook that kind of prompted Ben to sort of poke the bear, as he said, was, and maybe you misconstrued it or not, because I am still very high in the finale, and I will tell you the one scene, I'll get to it very quickly in a second, that I felt made the pilot for me, or made the finale for me. But it was a very, very, very calculated finale. In the same way that you and I like Good Will Hunting, you listen to what Nick said he wanted to have happen in the episode. Everything that season was built up to, we need to have this moment, Jesse has to kill Todd, there has to be that comeuppance, Walt has to do something crazy badass that looks like it's impossible and pull it off, he has to make amends, there has to be it was almost like a checklist. And these are the things that have to happen.
Here's the thing.
That's well said. Because not only does he need to kill Todd, he needs to kill all the neo-Nazis. He needs to, in whatever way he can, and it's not going to be, like a Lifetime movie, he's going to get the best possible reconciliation with Skylar.
But it's not
the best possible reconciliation.
It's not that. But the problem, what Ben's likely going to argue, if I can guess, is that.
But I know he's going to argue.
That is a plot. That is a plot they set into motion that they had to wrap up, and it wasn't necessarily the characters, the proper arc, not arc, but it wasn't driven out of the character's motivation. It was driven out of these are the events that have to take place to put this kind of Rube Goldberg device in there.
Well, sure. And what I said to Ben over instant message was,
you are cheating on me with Nick.
Oh yeah, you know it.
Well, you're the new Nick, right? You know the new Nick.
Yeah, and
if you learn how to play bass, it's the only thing holding you back, my friend. And trust me, it's real easy to play bass. I play bass because you can't play guitar. But I told Ben over instant message, I go, I'm not super high on the finale, and we'll get into this later, I'm sure. Today, as it stands, still my favorite finale of all time is the 6 Feet Under finale.
Oh, see, I was about to bring it into it.
Hold on. I'll let you take that. I'll let you run with it. But what I'm saying is, it's not anywhere near that finale for me as far as what it accomplished and how it tied up the series, a series that I was deeply emotionally tied to. But I told you where I am. I feel like it wasn't the best finale of all time, but it was very good, and it accomplished all of the things that I wanted the finale to accomplish. And then you said, well, I'll disagree with you, but I'm going to save it for the podcast. So let's hear it, Benny.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
I
agree with what you say about it being calculated. It was calculated. I think that they had a very specific end game in mind.
And calculated for a big audience.
Yeah, yes.
Something to take into account.
I think they did really well with the fact that they met the goals that they wanted to the show met its goals. I mean, like I said, it met its goals 3 episodes before the finale. It had done everything it needed to do.
It met my goals when it cast Bill Burr and Bob Odenkirk for the same drama.
Exactly. But so this is a show that's already eclipsed most of everything else that's been on TV in recent memory.
That being said,
so like I said, we're talking about a show that has set the bar really high. I consider that calculation a miscalculation. And here's the funny thing. That I'll bring it back to like what you said about 6 Feet Under. It set the bar so high. It gave me the finale, and actually really the last 3 episodes gave me a real appreciation for The Sopranos and the way The Sopranos ended their series. Because
don't stop.
The Sopranos realized there was no way that they were going to please people with the ending of that show. If Tony died, you're alienating half of your audience. If you put them into witness protection, you're alienating half of your audience. I mean, there was no way where you're not going to alienate a portion of your audience. Breaking Bad did well by doing something that everybody was gonna be palpable for everybody, and they tied up everything well. I consider The Sopranos a show that was on. I don't think The Sopranos was quite as good as Breaking Bad as a show in its entirety. Mm-hmm. However, they had set the standard of quality, and then they got to the end and they said, "You know what? I think it's better to leave this as being ambiguous."
They ended on their own terms,
and we're going to end this on our own terms, and I appreciated that a lot. But the funny thing is that. And like I said, I want to kind of move away from Breaking Bad because we're really going to harp on it. Obviously, it's topical right now.
One more thing to say about it, and it ties into The Sopranos.
But you can come back to this. The interesting thing about Breaking Bad is, and like I said, I'm not going to argue anything about the finale of it being a bad episode of television because it's not. I'm not going to say anything about being doing improper things with characters because ultimately it didn't. It was fine. I wish I saw things tied up with other characters. I wish I saw things done differently with other characters. I still think the best scene in the finale is the scene with Skyler and Walt, and when he gets to touch his daughter's head, and that scene encapsulates what should be that last episode, regardless. But anyways, the funny thing is that Breaking Bad is a show that I loved from beginning to end. One of my favorite finales of all time is 6 Feet Under, which is a show that I thought started with incredible potential and really went downhill at one point. I mean, there was an entire season of 6 Feet Under that I feel is pretty, for me, cliched and unwatchable.
Disagree. Yeah.
I know, and I understand. And most people do disagree with me.
No, I don't know if most people would disagree. I mean, the thing about 6 Feet Under, I know what season you're talking about, too.
Season 4?
Yeah, and here's the thing. We talk about Breaking Bad. I would say the same thing about Season 4. Any episode in Season 4 is still better than most TV. Now, is that make it forgivable?
I really disagreed with that. 6 Feet Under, because 6 Feet Under was, I remember we had watching parties of 6 Feet Under when we were in film school.
And then I moved to LA and I still had listening, and it followed me. And it was a big deal.
I have actually a discussion that will tie all 3 of the things we're talking about together, and it's going to involve a 4th, which is The Wire. So,
nice.
Again, with Breaking Bad, I look at it as how did the final story? Stop instead of looking at it like episodes or chapters or whatever. How did the story as a whole go together? I 100% agree with you. If I have 4 things that I loved about the finale. The number 1 thing I loved was the scene with him and Skyler where she goes, "Are you going to say you're doing it for your family again?" "No, I did it for me." Mm-hmm. I liked it. I was good at it. It made me feel alive. Is maybe one of the most poignant lines in the entire series, and his delivery and her reaction is heartbreaking. That was probably where the episode won me over 100%.
And also, Matt, which is cool.
It gives me goosebumps. I mean, I literally have goosebumps thinking about it. It broke my heart.
And I've heard you talk about this in the podcast, and it's overplayed too, and in the media. But the very first episode, Walter White is in front of his class, and he goes, "Chemistry is the science of change." And then you have it.
The study of change.
The through line of the show. Yeah. But it also, in that episode, in the very first pilot, the thing that Skyler said scared her the most is when Walt wouldn't talk to her, wouldn't be honest with her.
Yeah.
And in that moment, he was honest with her for the very first time in 2 years.
Yeah, the only time he's been honest in the entire series with anyone. I mean, he's never, even to himself, admitted what he is or what drove him. And there were little things I liked. I loved that they worked Badger and Skinny Pete in. I thought it was hysterical how they did it. I thought it was a great nod to bring these two characters in.
It also juxtaposed what violent end the neo-Nazis had to the Schwartzes, where he let's spare the people who I can spare, and my last, blaze of glory, I'll spare the people who I can spare, but the Nazis have to die.
I would say the one thing, if I were, as far as like structure of that final season, the only thing I would add in is obviously when Walt gets to the final episode, he's no longer, I said it to my friend, I called it Waltenberg. He's, just setting the mood lighting here all of a sudden.
The lights went down even lower. He's
no longer Walt, he's no longer Heisenberg. He's this weird, I loved that character better than I loved Walter Heisenberg, and he's apparent no more than he is in that scene with the two people from Grey Matter, Gretchen and whatever the guy's name is, where it's this nonchalant, like, okay, yeah, I was a badass, but you also know who I started as, and now I'm just this guy. It's the same delivery he gives to Carol, like Carol, the lady at the house when he goes in with the stuff. I love it.
Or Drake. Started from the bottom, now I'm here.
But talking about how you view a finale based on the seasons, there's a common thread between The Sopranos, 6 Feet Under, and The Wire. They all had what most people consider actually very satisfying finales for the most part, or at least talked about.
The Sopranos does not have most people really.
A lot of people are coming back around, I think, on that now that they're becoming.
I think
people are getting more savvy.
I don't think we're going to talk about Lost. At least Lost laid it out.
No,
they
Lost
tried something.
No,
Sopranos didn't try anything. They played the last call song in every college town bar and faded out.
Here's the thing that those other series we just talked about did that Lost didn't. All of the other ones had weak seasons. Arguably, most of them, their weakest seasons leading up to the finale. The Wire, 5th season, is bar none its weakest, but it has a wonderful finale that ties up all those characters. The Sopranos 6th season is not a good season.
It's probably one of the 2 weakest.
Yeah, it is very, very poor, but it had an interesting finale that at least did try to do something artistically. 6 Feet Under, same thing. Coming out of a little bit of a slump, did a better job with their final season, but had a satisfying ending. Now, Lost did the exact opposite of all those things. Lost said, we're going to make an interesting season, and we're going to make a finale for that season. There was so much shit
in that season that just came out of nowhere.
But see,
it did actually make it. Okay, you're like, what? What?
It made it. The problem with Lost is that it made a contained story for the 6th season, and it was a finale for that story. It was not a finale for the series. That was a season finale. I fully could watch another show that went on to do like another season to describe
whatever happened, Matt.
Listen, by the way, I'm a fan of the Lost finale as a season finale and as an episode and as an emotional, cathartic moment with these characters, knowing it's their last. I think it's a beautifully shot, edited, and acted episode. Do I think the story that is told, that is tied up in it, is in any way satisfying for someone that sat through 6 seasons, including season 2? Do you remember the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3? Some of the worst episodes of that series ever made.
And here's the thing about Lost, and I'm glad we're getting into it. I'm kind of an unapologetic Lost fan. And definitely the only guy in this room willing to stick up for Damon. But you
don't say that name here.
Well, the thing that was interesting is I sent Ben an article earlier this week that I want you to read too, Matt, where Damon Lindelof was asked to write a piece on the Breaking Bad finale.
Yeah.
And he starts off and he goes,
he managed to make it all about himself.
Well, Ben, he did, but it was
funny.
Did he rewrite the series with an unsatisfying ending?
And still read it, Matt. But basically, the article read like this: first open, he goes, Breaking Bad absolutely deserves to be in the upper, echelon of TV shows ever. It's brilliant writing. The way they paid off all the characters and the finale and throughout the entire series was masterful. And I will always and forever be a fan. And when I was asked to write something about the finale, I couldn't pass it up. I had to. I was such a big fan.
Oh, pardon me.
Nice.
Sorry, Damon.
But here's where it started to go off the rails on a crazy train of thought. he ends up bringing it back to the fact where
everybody hates the Lost finale.
Everybody hates the Lost finale, and everybody loved the Breaking Bad finale. So he knew inevitably, if he wrote a piece about this Breaking Bad finale, he'd almost have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. That if he writes how great Breaking Bad was, then inevitably someone in the comment page of the BuzzFeed article that linked to the original article that linked to another article.
Oh, poor him. He's not going to say something in the article. He's worried that fans are going to be pissed off.
That's what he says. That's his justification for it. His justification is that
I'll go cry my piles of money. I get it. But the truth is, in many ways,
that means something to me.
I related to the last episode of Breaking Bad on a level that no one else really, I feel like, maybe even could. Because I felt like it was almost Walter White in that situation. That it got away from him. It completely got away from him, and he was judged, and he just wanted to go back. And I thought it was a pretty good...
We gotta go back, Carlton.
We gotta go back.
No, it was a pretty funny thing. But here's the thing...
We have to write this sketch.
Lost. Fuck you guys.
The first half of that article is really interesting because I thought it was going to go in a completely different direction than it actually went in.
Oh, so it's like an episode of Lost.
Exactly. Because the second half of the episode is him going back and re-defending him. The last 3 paragraphs are him continuing to defend. He's like, it's my baby. I'm defending Lost. I'm like, I thought we were talking about Breaking Bad.
You're taking a different tone. But what really happened is Damon went back to the Lost message boards and he saw what the fans wanted him to write about the Breaking Bad finale, and then he incorporated it. Yeah. And now everyone's butthurt.
No, listen, Lost still to this day is one of the most unique shows.
It was event television. I can't think of a TV show that I made Jack Shepherd pie. That's true.
Jack Shepherd pie.
I made Hurley fries. I printed out the Dharma labels. I had,
listen. I am still an obsessive, gigantic Lost fan. It's part of, and again,
it was hard sci-fi on ABC.
No, and
sci-fi was like Star Trek: The Next Generation, which you can get to.
Which I can get to as well.
No, Lost. Listen, I cried during the finale of Lost. During the first, the opening minutes actually of the series finale for Lost, I cried at. They were showing all of the characters preparing for their inevitable conclusion. Right. Now I know why they were all so sad, because they knew where they were going to end up, and it's really just terrible. But listen, I still think here's the greatest thing Lost did. Lost made me watch television differently, and it absolutely 100% colored how Ben and I wrote our series. Oh, yeah, it was a definitive, here are the things that Lost did that were amazing, and we want to do that same kind of stuff and make that kind of event televition. And
you knew there was an audience. There was an audience for it once Lost was successful.
Well, here's the thing. I don't mean to I'm not trying to sound conceited by saying this, but I look at TV, and you can watch 10 minutes of an episode and say, this is going to work for a series, or this isn't going to work for a series. If somebody ever told me, and I told Nick this, or somebody asked me, what is the best television pilot of all time, I would direct them to the Lost pilot. Because it did everything exquisitely. It didn't dumb it down for the audience. Mm-hmm. It didn't play it down at all. It let the questions linger, and it let the acting speak for itself, and then for the characterization of the people who were within those scenes to speak for themselves. And
it moved at a great pace.
It moved at a fantastic pace. It was just excellently done.
The pilot did, however, have the worst pilot of Oceanic Flight 815.
Listen,
I've been sitting on that one, boys.
If you say another bad word about Greg Grunberg, I will kick you out of this house right now. That's JJ's best friend, my friend.
That's the biggest manliest goatee I've ever seen.
One of the reasons why I'm still confident in like the Dream Riders pilot and that sort of stuff is that I feel like there was this huge influx of people that were trying to capture the stuff that Lost was doing, like Flash Forward and
Under the Dome more recently, probably.
Well, I mean,
God Almighty,
it's really bad.
I wanted it to be good.
I want it to be great, and it's
Brian K. Vaughan of Why the Last Man fame, the most important graphic novel of this or any generation.
Even Fringe, which is a show that I'm can be apologetic for, and I actually like the pilot. Mm-hmm. That show is like the X-Files first 4 seasons, where especially when you're dealing with your Monster of the Week episodes, you've got some ups and downs. You know, you're going to have it didn't reach the consistent level of quality that maybe the Lost.
Do you know what?
Season of
But
Lost
do you know what Fringe did that pissed me? And I watched every episode of that show because I enjoyed it. I loved John Noble. Really deserved an Emmy for one of those seasons. He was just fantastic in it.
Well, Elfman deserves an Oscar.
The problem with Fringe is the exact same fucking problem they had with Lost.
Exactly.
The last 2 seasons, they do this crazy shift where you're now dealing with an alternate universe, and characters that aren't the same characters that started the series. They're literally, like, it's not even like Lost where you say, like, oh, I don't even recognize Jack anymore. No, it's not even the same Olivia. It's not the same anyone. And they have a beautiful finale that, again, is a finale of the last season. That's all it is. It ties up a story they started 5/6 of the way through the series. And you can't decide that you're going to set in motion the end of your story, but you're going to start it 3/4 of the way through your book.
Agreed.
You cannot do that. It is not fair to the people that started. That's saying, oh, well, we're going to reward the people that started watching this late. That's really what it's saying. We know that most of the people didn't watch the first few seasons. They've become popular, and we'll do it. And what's funny is Breaking Bad is somewhat guilty of that, but they pay a lot better lip service to what came before it.
I think the Breaking Bad finale was safe.
Yes,
it was safe.
It's a great way to describe it.
But it doesn't, and that's not taking away from the quality of the episode or the writing, the performance. But they really kind of, I think they just had a good pulse
Greg
on the
wasn't
fan
kidding, by the
base.
way. This is fucking awesome.
It's good.
It's really good.
He said this is like one of his favorite beers. Thank you.
Are you pouring that right now?
Yeah.
Can I have some of that?
You may.
And you know, I say this much too. And with Lost, I stick up for it so much. I have a gallery on Facebook just of like MS Paint portraits of the characters. I was an unapologetic fan, but I'll tell you what. When I knew that this was going to be the topic of this show, I thought, okay, I guess now is as good a time as any to like rewatch that Lost finale for the first time since it aired, and I didn't. I didn't watch it because I was scared. I was scared.
In interest,
because I always thought that it was more about the journey than the destination with Lost. And I understand. It sounds like a cop out, but it was different than other shows for me.
Do you remember in Super Mario how you would like not Super Mario, but
starring Bob Hoskins?
No, with like Mario World, how you would like jump from place to place, but sometimes there was no rhyme or reason how you could go backwards and like forwards and all over the place.
The warp.
That was exactly
the warp whistle.
That was Lost to me.
Well, the thing about Lost, and look, as a big fan, I was underwhelmed by the finale, and I have still to this day obviously not gone back and rewatched it. But I feel like, people give Lindelof and the writing staff a lot of shit for
I honestly
writing themselves out of a paper bag.
I don't give Lindelof shit for Lost because Lost was its own deal. Like I was even fine. I was like, do Lost. I give Lindelof shit for the other stuff that he's been involved with.
Well, listen,
except for World War Z, which he somehow managed to write a better ending.
Exactly.
But,
we already talked about.
Well, I would say in interest of time, we're not super over on time, but I think what would be kind of interesting for us to go here is I know Nick has one up his sleeve that he wants to talk about that probably neither of the other of us prepared anything for. I don't know if you have something similar that you don't think anyone else is going to talk about.
You're talking about a series finale.
A series finale. Some kind of series finale. And
I have a few.
And again, in interest of time,
I can.
If we can keep it to like TV, let's each of us take 2 more TV shows. We will do a part 2 to this podcast because I want to get into books and movies as well. But let's stick to TV.
Well, Back to the Future 3 was the greatest bookend to anything.
Oh, thanks, Greg.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I know you want to talk about TV, but Back to the Future. All right. So everyone kind of pick your 2. And Nick...
2 best.
Spinning thing. Yeah, okay.
Then they spun their guitars.
It doesn't have to be the best. You can just something that's worth discussion.
Okay, well, I just go back to 6 Feet Under real briefly.
Nope.
The thing that was so cool about 6 Feet Under is one time I was on a plane, and I've seen this series many times over. I was on a plane, and I was sitting next to this guy who was watching the Lost finale on his iPad, or is It was not an iPad, actually. This is years ago. This is like an iPad video, I think they called it. And they were watching, and I could tell that it was the finale because I could hear Sia. That song, Sia.
Oh, you mean the 6 Feet Under, not
That
Lost.
song from the very last
Yeah,
scene.
the last is amazing.
Which is an amazing example of a pop song in a medium. But every time I hear that song, I get chills. It immediately takes me back. And it's more visceral than anything that I can even come up with another example of. And I'll never forget, at the viewing party, I was sitting down, and the moment I realized that the last episode, everyone was going to die. Like, the moment I realized that, it was just sinking, like, oh shit. They're all gonna, of course, they're all gonna die. Every episode has started off with some random person dying. Of course, the last episode is gonna be everybody that we followed for these past, 6 years dying as well. So part of that was brilliant, but I thought the best thing about that pilot was, or the finale was, that for so long we thought this was Nate's show. And really, what I came to discover is that show was really about Claire.
It was Claire's show.
It was Claire's, and these two just like revelations back to back for me. I realized, everyone's gonna die, and oh shit, this has been about Claire the whole time. Was so like groundbreaking for me, and the payoff for a series that I've never been more emotionally invested in characters in a show ever, or a movie, or any medium. And that was it was a pitch perfect ending that is hard for me to watch for all the right reasons. But another thing that I actually ended up watching instead of the Lost finale the other night was the Star Trek The Next Generation finale. Which I've never really watched the show. But I, did some Googling, and a lot of these really, hardcore Trekkies cite that as being, a really great finale. So I watched it with Ben and my mutual friend, Michael Maroney.
Ben Monstre, we're talking about here.
No, Michael Maroney.
No, I thought you said
Ben.
Watched it with Ben and Michael.
I said a mutual friend of Ben and I.
Oh.
Michael Maroney.
Oh, okay.
Don't give Monstre any additional credit here. He has no place in this podcast.
His song does one day, though.
So Mike and I are watching the Star Trek Next Generation finale, and the premise is basically this. They tease this disease that Picard gets during the series
AIDS.
called... right. Riker never...
No.
Riker's
You said you were clean, Riker. When you gave me your number one, you said it was clean.
Stop.
Actually,
Space AIDS is the worst kind of AIDS.
Actually, he got it from Deanna Troi. You don't have to go
Beastman
gay here.
AIDS. Beastman AIDS is the worst kind of AIDS.
Beastman AIDS.
Jesus. So Picard gets Beastman AIDS. No, it's actually funny. He gets something called urematic disease. Urematic, buddy.
What about me?
Urematic. And it basically just is this degenerative neurological condition that eventually results in death, but that people hallucinate, and they
what all of the Lost writers had when they were
fabricate
making
memories.
the pilot.
Fuck you. The pilot's still great.
The finale.
Ben just said the pilot didn't stand with anything.
For God's sake.
Listen, just pour yourself another beer and shut up, all right? So he gets urematic disease, which is devastating. And he also, throughout this episode, starts traveling in time, inexplicably. All of a sudden, he'll walk through a door, and now he'll be 20 years in the future, he'll be 20 years in the past. They bring back characters who haven't been seen since the pilot episode. There was one actress who died in the pilot episode. Right. Well, look at you. You said you didn't prepare for this.
No, I didn't know that. My mom and my brother watched
Nerd
it. I
alert.
knew about that.
Nerd alert. So
They made it essentially a Christmas Carol.
Sort of.
Is this my future ghost? Do I die of the space bad
How
AIDS?
the fuck?
What can I do to stop this horrible turn of events? Is this the shadow of things that are to happen, or that might? Tell me I can rid me of the spaceman AIDS. Oh God, I gotta watch this series now.
You gotta see it now. You gotta see it. And Worf is the ghost of Christmas Past, for sure. For sure. And he was fucking Deanna Troi at that point in the series. And there was
Worf
this weird
or,
Worf. And there was this weird tension
Klingon?
with weird tension with Riker. He was really awesome. But that's a subplot. And so basically what this finale enabled us to do is it actually went to some dark places. We know Picard's going to die. And we know that he has this degenerative disease that he's always been so strong and the captain of the ship. Now the characters are starting to doubt, A, the fact that he's traveling through time, and B, they think that this rheumatic disease is starting to really take its toll and he's got his last legs. But they respect him so much as a captain that the crew from the past, the present, and the future all band together to help him prove that it's not the disease, that it's one, his one last ride. And they love him so much that even if they think that it's, gonna get them all killed, it's for someone that they love that much. And it also gives fans a chance to see other characters in the past. And having not ever been invested in the series or watched other episodes, I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What do you got?
I love shows with time travel.
Oh, hell yeah. You would have liked the Fringe finale if
Deanna Troi was the lost constant.
Ah, the constant. Sonya Walger. Her breasts are my constant.
If I had to talk about like shows I really loved, the ending for, there was this one show that came out in the 50s called.
There's one I need you to talk about because I'm likely going to put something from it in the intro tomorrow.
MASH.
Yes,
you have to say MASH.
I was actually prepping that because MASH. It may be the greatest sitcom.
There's no May anymore. Oh, you mean I was saying it is the definitive finale.
But it is the definitive finale. MASH is one of the most, and I still remember people talking about before I actually ever watched the show. How, first off, the movie's fantastic. With the way that it deals with the issues, with the humor. But the MASH finale is the one time I can remember hearing. First time I ever remember hearing people talk about watching TV and crying.
Yeah.
And like that being the definitive thing that people were breaking down over the finale of MASH. And when I finally watched the series and I did it right and I watched it from beginning to end, I was 16 years old and I bawled my eyes out. MASH is still...
At 16 years old, huh?
Yeah.
Isn't that when you're trying to be tough and like your balls drop and
listen? That's about the time
and
that
you become not a pussy.
You didn't know me. I was less of a man than you were.
I only knew you as a Muppet of a man.
Don't mention that movie.
Man.
But if you don't like the Muppet,
we talked about this. We'll do it another.
If that's the last Muppet movie they ever make, that's technically a finale, and I'll put that in the hat.
Fuck it, it's got to get from. That stupid show.
If I had to mention any other finale that I think that I would have respected at all, it's actually in Millennium, which is
great show.
Chris Carter.
We talked about this recently, didn't we?
Yeah, Chris Carter did the X-Files, and he also did Millennium. Now, the X-Files
and he caught a lot of touchdowns.
Well, the X-Files, of course.
Oh shit! I'm in fantasy right now. Sorry.
1 second.
Talk, Ben. I'm gonna ignore you.
The X-Files. The X-Files.
This is so bright.
The X-Files notoriously went downhill after season 5, and is one of the worst season and series endings of all time. Millennium ran for 3 seasons.
Did it make it all the way through 3? I thought it was only 2.
3 seasons, or 2.5. But the last season was augmented.
Fred Jackson already scoring 8 points.
I think what happened was with the same thing that Chris Carter realized where he was hitting a stride in the X-Files was between seasons 2 and 3. I think that's exactly where Millennium ended, and that's the reason why the series finale of Millennium is very ambiguous. Obviously, I don't think they knew that if the show was going to continue or not. But the performances in that show are fantastic. They're better than the X-Files. I'll go ahead and say it.
Whoa, slow down there, partner.
Whoa. But I'll say
the truth is right here.
Besides the ones that are obviously like current or whatever, I would say that I really liked the last episode of Millennium, the one that aired.
That was and it was.
I don't think I ever saw that.
And and you bring up a very good point that we kind of talked about a lot with Dream Writers. And it's one of the things that I think Breaking Bad actually benefited from, and more shows are doing it now. Mad Men has a definitive finale. They're going to do the same as Breaking Bad. Take one final season, split it into 2 years, and they're done. So they have 2 seasons essentially left. Do you need to go check?
We're up.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Mask it.
And Wilfred's doing the same thing. It's going to end next season. Like, there's a lot of ones where they're giving them time to tie up their story. And a lot of times when they're pushed to tie up the story early, they tend to, it's better. It's quick. And I'm really hoping that what we see in the evolution of television, especially with Netflix and things like that, is that someone announces literally, no one's done it yet at the beginning of a series, which is kind of how we wrote Dream Writers. We wrote Dream Writers as 3 seasons. 3 seasons, 12 episodes each. We can tell our story to full potential with no filler and really just make every episode count and tell this amazing story.
And that's what Breaking Bad did really well. You know, when things were supposed to happen, they happened.
Breaking Bad did a good job. I think I still am a little sometimes with the show that last season, that how it was split up. I don't know. I still love it. But what I was shows I was going to talk about that actually usually went on too long, but still had a satisfying conclusion. One of the ones I have that I don't think anyone else here is going to talk about is House. And House had a really beautiful final arc. It was something set into motion halfway through the final season, and it was a show that had I will say one thing about House. Even when it sort of became repetitive, they worked their ass off to
prove it wasn't lupus.
To change things up. I mean, season 4, they got rid of their primary cast and they brought in all new people and made like a thing, and you kept waiting for the other characters to come back. Some of them eventually did, but like a season or 2 later. It really hadn't been done like that. I hadn't seen it really switched out so much. What they did really brilliantly with the finale, obviously House is Sherlock Holmes. I mean, I don't know if anyone out there watched it or didn't watch it, but Dr. Gregory House is Holmes. Dr. Watson Dr. Wilson is Watson.
Yeah.
And what they did, which was really smart, is that the most important core relationship in that show, even though it wasn't always at the forefront, is Wilson and House. And the final arc of the episode was that Wilson gets cancer. And House is trying to deal with this, and House gets to the final episode, and he's contemplating suicide. They do a great job of bringing other characters back. He's considering letting himself die in this kind of like heroin den.
Obamacare.
Yeah. He's going to let himself die in this heroin den, and they bring back all of these other characters, where it's actually just him talking to himself, but he's talking to each of these characters from past seasons that have influenced him. And what they did was really interesting is that a lot of the characters had they would bring a character back who is a very altruistic and naive and hopeful character, and they would have that one exhibiting his most pessimistic thoughts and most these things that were really interesting. And the end of the episode or the series is that he does a very Sherlock Holmesian thing where he fakes his death and gets out of all of his oobligations. And then the last shot of the episode is that it's him and Wilson, and Wilson's kind of talking about how he's got about 6 months to live. And House and him, and they both get on motorcycles.
Right.
Yeah, they both get on, they put on the helmets. He's like, well, we're going to fucking make this 6 months awesome. And it was a really beautiful, emotional tie for those two characters that are, for me, were always the most interesting to watch. Everyone else was kind of just superfluous to me. But it was a really nicely done finale. And it was a show that tried really hard to be episodic and formulaic at the same time, and did a pretty decent job.
Okay. Well, so here's what we just realized, or here's what I just realized, or became cognizant of.
I talk too loud?
No, not that you talk too loud.
We've
always known that. Is that here's the thing: when Matt and I have the tendency to geek out, which is the reason why we started the podcast. Nick is our equal on this level. I mean, more so than a Greg Klein. All apologies, Greg. I don't mean that as any
he's
offense.
going to kill your babies.
Right. I mean that like in a good way. But as our equal, we could probably sit here and talk for 5 or 6 hours if we want to about.
I got the time.
Yeah. Well, like special edition.
We'll do another.
Let's do it.
Well, what's funny also, actually, why I like our conversations with Nick is almost always dead center between the two of us on.
Absolutely.
It's if I love something and you hated it, Nick is right in the middle.
I
of
like
that
to be
thing.
the meat in your sandwiches.
Well, it actually works the same way. I think the things that Nick really loves, like for instance, 6 Feet Under, that I said, I really, really hated where that show went, even though I think the finale is one of the best finales of all time. You're somewhere in the middle right there. You don't think it's one of the greatest shows of all time.
Come
You're
on,
like,
Nate in the drive-thru's like, yeah, I like a number. One of
the
the best scenes in television.
Do you smell eggs?
Yeah, do you smell eggs?
I still like.
heart's
There's
saying,
still
poor
plenty of times where I'm just like, my arm is numb. No arm.
No.
I will say this about
Narm.
this will probably
I didn't
make
joke about it, but that killed me when I saw that. It killed me.
This will probably make Nick super happy. But you talked about the song at the end of 6 Feet Under. Now, when 6 Feet Under hit its finale, my brother was way more into that show than I was. I was like a lapsed Catholic with 6 Feet Under. I'd kind of gone away for a couple seasons. I started to sort of watch towards the end.
You molested some children,
and I didn't catch the finale live. My brother's like, "You have to watch this." So we watched it, and that last scene was just, I was like, "Oh my god, this is absolutely amazing." And I went out for my first time to Bandera, maybe 3 weeks after that episode aired. My brother burned me like 7 CDs for my drive out to Bandera. I was going by myself, so it was like this long journey. And the song I was listening to as I drove into Bandera on my journey, where I was like freaking out about going there, was the song from 6 Feet Under. And I was just, and I got very emotional.
I think you know what this podcast bumper music is going to be.
I could maybe make that happen.
Let's
look at our futures.
I'm not going to pay for it on iTunes.
Guys,
but I can
we're going to do another podcast, I think, where we're going to talk about the role of pop music in movies, which I think is great, because it just reminded me of the fact that I was like, man, I never listen to the National albums. Whenever I hear their songs in movies, I'm like, oh my god, I just want to cry. I'm not sure why.
I'm just going to play out all of our deaths. I'm going to describe them at the end of this. And it's just going to be like, Matt Shank fell off a chair after a wedding. Dead. 2017.
But I need to ride to the airport, Matt.
Matt can't drive to the airport.
You're
He's
like,
dead.
2011. 2011. Reanimated by beer. Died again in 2000.
Yeah, Ben's right. We could go on.
Many of
about
our
this for
interactions
hours.
actually could have been cold open to 6 Feet Under, but somehow you miraculously survived them.
I'm just the zombie that survives the zombie apocalypse.
That's actually a really funny idea of a video. Is let's just do it where we do the opening or whatever, where it's like Matt Shank, time, date, whatever, and then you wake up and you're like, motherfucker, that hurt. Like every time you seriously hurt yourself, it looks like you kill yourself. I had the same idea with, like, you know, the John Gruden quarterback camp? Like how John Gruden was, like, talking about, like...
Colt McCoy, I think you got what it takes.
He's like, oh, yeah. See, what happened? Who is the primary receiver on a Spider Y Banana Z? It's the fullback, right? I was thinking, how about we just, like, superimpose whatever they're showing on the screen, be it it's porn? And he's like, yeah, you see that? He's like, now explain your approach here. Explain your approach here, because you looked at your primary, but then you gotta go to your secondary. And
mine's just gonna
Cue
be...
the tight end joke.
My death thing is gonna be like, Matt Shank died 2013, 2017... 2011, 2022, 2024, 2027. Continued on next page.
This is right for great ideas. Anyway,
well, I think
we've overstayed our way.
There's one thing though that I'm amazed that Ben let us get through at the beginning of the podcast without saying, which is where you can find the new way. Have you happened upon this in some other way not from our website, but you can find us on our website, www.lastpintprod.com, or on Twitter @Twinner.
Winner, chicken Twitter.
At Last Pint Prod.
On Twinker.
Or Facebook.
Don't go on Twinker.
Or Facebook.com/.
I made a terrible mistake once.
Guys.
And by the way, I really hope that after this podcast, I have to go home and attempt to record what I think may be the greatest intro ever. So you may have already heard it. I urge you right now, if you should just go back.
Started in the middle of the episode.
You should. I want you to go. Yes, I want you to go back and listen to the intro.
I think that we should start recording right now. We're in a good place.
If for any reason you said, I fucking hate those intros, let me skip that.
Matt
Let
Shank
me
makes
move forward.
Hey, you know that
Fuck you, and fuck the people that didn't listen to my intro. You guys are all assholes. I hate all of you. Do you know how much time I spend on these intros?
You know, that Matt Shank, he's got some really great insight on film and television, but his fucking intros, man. God damn it.
You can attack anything about me, but you attack my intros, it is personal, my friend. Personal. Alright, this has been the first New Way with Ben and Matt and Nick. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I want to listen to it again, because I just love to fucking hear about TV conversations.
I like the sound of my own voice.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Oh, wait. Guys, we forgot the best finale of all time. It just happened, and it wasn't Breaking Bad. It was Dexter.
Oh,
the best television finale.
Listen, that's for part two. It's for part two, but it's the worst, one of the worst seasons and episodes of television of all time.
Well, we're going to ride into the storm right now.
I thought you were just going to be punny and be like, "Oh, it's the finale of the New Way podcast with Ben and Matt."
But
and
it's
Nick.
not. There are many more to come, right?
But it's the season
that
finale.
was the joke. Yeah,
Oh.
is it? We
I'm
have a
sorry.
season. We're at like episode 27. What an odd season order.
Well, technically, it wasn't like the first day of fall 3 days ago. So yeah, it didn't work. Whatever.
No. I think we'll continue this in a second podcast, which actually won't be the next one that you hear with Nick, which will hopefully be our long rumored and much overdue music podcast. We're actually getting a lot of good things out of the way that we haven't talked about.
And we still have potentially the upcoming potential of the Gadwell Lane podcast, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one because I have questions to moderate for you and Mr. Luke that I think could be awfully fun.
Well, our core audience has got to be legal by now, so they probably are downloading podcasts and listening to they're probably drinking their cappuccinos, listening to podcasts now.
Except for Luke's girlfriend.
Oh no, they're always underage.
Now, I have questions planned for you guys. Like, so is it hard to make music?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very
anyway,
hard.
thank you guys
Very,
so
very
much for
hard.
listening. Thank you, Nick, for flying from LA just to do this podcast.
Let's do the podcast. That's
And not to
appreciate
see
it.
babies or people or whatever, just to do the podcast. And
babies happen.
We will talk to you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Say cheers.
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 For fuck's sake.